Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about how to plan, create, and distribute great content. This is the second one of our marketing masterclasses, so thank you for joining us. Today, a very special session with Rose, our content manager, Jon, our head of content, Rose McMillan and Jon Davis, to give them their full names. Please make sure you seek them out on LinkedIn. I'm Daniel Duran, head of marketing at Capsule. Seek me out as well. We're always happy to chat with you all on LinkedIn. If you have any questions after this session, please drop us some messages on there. We're happy to come back to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here to present to you. Dan's introduced me already. My name's Jon. I'm the head of content at Capsule. I'm married. I've got a very young daughter, as you can see from the photo. She'd actually just turned 1 about 2 weeks ago. But just a little bit about me. I've been in content for, I'd say, about 15 years now. Before that, I was actually a computer science graduate. So I took a bit of a detour in my career to get to where I am now. I predominantly worked in the B2B space, actually, for lots of tech SaaS firms all over the world. But I have worked in B2C and I have worked agency side. A little bit as well about me personally. I'm a part-time video games journalist. I'm a big fan of writing, always have been. So I do a little bit of that on the side. I've been at Capsule actually now for a little while. I've been here for about 2.5 years. So if you registered for the webinar, you're probably seeing a bit of the content that myself and my team have produced on the way there. I hope you're all enjoying it. Just a quick ask of you all as well. We're always looking to connect with like-minded people just so we can learn and collaborate. So do feel free to add me on LinkedIn. My profile is there, and I'm going to hand over to Rose.
Hi everyone, lovely to meet you all. I'm Rose. I'm the content manager here at Capsule, so I work with Jon on a lot of the projects here. I haven't worked in content quite as long as Jon. I'll let you work out why. But I have quite a diverse background. So I've worked in PR and journalism and social media, mostly in the B2B space, but also in HR and employment law. So I have a bit of a diverse background. So I've done lots of different types of content for lots of different businesses. I've been at Capsule since September 2023. And just like Jon said, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. We love talking to you all.
Thank you, Rose. Shall we get started? So, what are you going to learn today? 3 steps to creating content. The first one, actually, you don't have to write anything at all. That's a lie, actually. You'll see in a minute why I'm lying there. But no blog posts, no actual copy or anything like that. We need you to become a researcher initially so you can figure out exactly what you're writing about. The second section, Rose and I will talk about writing and editing content and just share some quick and dirty tips, what we've been doing throughout our careers for editing written and writing written content. I've got a bit of a treat for you all as well. In between 2 and 3, I've got a quick ChatGPT demo. So obviously I'm not against using ChatGPT, by the way, guys. I'm all for using AI in my workflow. Just my rule of thumb regarding that is you need a human at the end of it because you don't want the machines to go a little bit out of hand and start creating content that doesn't really make sense. But I will show you something that I've made in preparation for this session, just to show you how you can use it and how it might be valuable for you when you come to write some content. And the last step 3, is all about you've got this content that you've researched, you've got this content that you've written and edited. Now, where's it going to go? And that's really important. People just forget about that. Really important step about making sure as many people as possible see it. So Rose is going to cover that, given her expertise in social media. And then finally, after we've finished giving this presentation, we'll answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. So do keep them coming through in the chat. So, step 1, do your homework. Now, the most important thing that anybody needs to remember whenever you're writing a piece of content is there's always a person that's going to read it. A big misconception is that you need to write for a search engine, or you need to write for machines, you need to write for an algorithm for LinkedIn or another social media platform. That's complete nonsense. There's always a person at the end of that, so just make sure you remember that. And people, they have feelings, they have emotions, they have needs, wants, frustrations. You've got to find out what those are before you even write anything. You need to know what these are. And it's really important because if you don't know what they are, you're not going to create content that actually connects or resonates with them in the initial instance. Good example I'll talk about on the next slide is about like a health and fitness like example I've given that will illustrate exactly why. But biggest tip for me when you're thinking about like researching what people's motivations, desires, and frustrations are, is just to start with a little bit of desk research. So what do I mean by that? Go onto Google, have a look around, try and drill into what people think about things. So in the case of picking a CRM, it's a little bit meta. You want to think about what are the things that like people like about using a CRM, what are the things that people like get frustrated with without CRM, and so on and so forth. There's loads of good places that I found that help me find that information. Reddit, for instance, is a really good place. In the case of the CRM example that I just shared, there's dozens upon dozens of subreddits like associated with small businesses, with CRMs, but then also Quora is a really great place as well. So what Quora is, if you don't know, is a repository of like questions. Essentially, people ask everything and anything on that website, and other people answer the questions. So you can get some really interesting insight into what people are thinking about anything you can think of, an array of topics, what people might think about, say, Formula One, which I'm a fan of, or what people think about football or soccer, depending on where you are in the world, or what people think about, I don't know, let's just say animals, right? You're going to get all sorts of stuff, and your job is to go through and figure that out. And once you've done that desk research, this is probably the most important step. You need to get in front of somebody and interview them, and basically the people that buy from you day to day. So I've got an example for you all, and I've set myself up here as this example. So I volunteered myself to you folks. So I want us all to pretend right now that we're working for a health and fitness brand. So I filled out this profile about myself here. And just to give you an example of the kind of information that you should be searching for and looking for. So you want to be asking, like, what kind of circumstances around the individuals that that are buying from you and that you're selling to. Are they employed full time? Do they own their own home? And then let's talk about the desires of these kinds of people, so things that they want. For me personally, being a young dad, I desire more sleep, guys. It's been a year since we've had Ellie and we're still not sleeping great. And the thing that I struggle with day to day is making quick and easy meals really quickly. But then also as well, because I'm looking after my daughter, I'm going to work and I'm not sleeping a great deal, I'm struggling to keep fit as well. Really, I then drilled into my challenges. So I mentioned that my 1-year-old is keeping me up all the time. I don't feel like I'm getting enough time to go to the gym. I feel like I'm really tired as a consequence all the time. I used to play a lot of sports when I was a kid. I played a lot of football or soccer, played a lot of cricket, and I'm carrying quite a few injuries. And the other thing about the recipe thing is I'm pretty bored of cooking the same thing over and over again, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. And then why do I want to do this? What's motivating me to do all of this? I just want to be healthy for later on in life. I want to be able to keep up with my daughter, just because I'm nearly 40, you see. So I want to be able to make sure that I'm active enough to be able to keep up with her as she gets older. And the last thing that I ask myself is, where am I getting my content from? So you can see I'm a big junkie for Reddit. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube and Men's Health. So what I've done here.
You're a spring chicken, by the way, Jon. 40 is no age.
Thanks, Dan. That's really helped my faltering ego. But the reason why I wanted to illustrate that example is the problem that people make if they, an assumption they make if they don't do their research and don't do their homework, right? So there's two people here. There's obviously the incredible Olympic athlete Usain Bolt, and then there's me. And both of us have similar motivations in terms of our goals, but are not identical. Usain Bolt is an Olympic sprinter, right, who needs to keep fit, who needs to follow a really strict nutritional regime, who probably has a child as well. But again, I'm making sweeping assumptions here. Maybe he's got help because he's an Olympic athlete and he's got loads of money. I don't know. But in the case of me, I'm asking similar questions. Does he have 3 children? Thanks, Jules. I didn't know that. It's still being new every day.
No excuse now, Jon. No excuse.
Yeah. Oh, that's really tickled me. You've got two people seeking very similar things. And if you'd not interviewed and asked these questions, and the questions I will send out in a follow-up afterwards for you to go and interview people, in initial instance, you might not be able to actually create content that fits those people. So I drafted some super quick sample headlines for these people. You can see here, would Usain Bolt necessarily be trying to cram 6 exercises into his lunch break? Probably not. Would Usain Bolt be doing 5 quick meals in 15 minutes? Maybe he will be, but I guarantee he's probably got a nutritionist or a chef cooking for him, right? Because of how elite, an incredible competitor he is. And for me, I don't remember the last time I ran 100 meters, let alone, ran. I don't even know the last time I ran, let alone did 100 meters. And I'm not watching what I'm eating. I'm not in terrible shape, but I'm telling you now, I love my food. I love my wines. That's why it's so important, guys. Similar needs. The research is essential.
So, how do you get started? The best thing to do is to first consider who is your ideal customer or your ICP. Who are the people that you know that your product fits perfectly? You need to consider what industry are they in, how big are they? Are they a developed business? Are they an established company? Are they a startup? Are they a 1 or 2 person operation or a 50 plus operation? You need to think all of these really specific things because all of those issues or all of those specifics completely change the type of content or the issues that they're having. So once you do that research, the best thing to do is to just write down all of the information you have on one sheet of paper. And then from there, you can start looking at personalizing your content. Because as Jon said, it doesn't, what one person wants is not the same as what everyone else needs. And if you're not creating something that really cuts through the noise that everyone deals with on a daily basis, then your content isn't going to make an impact and it isn't going to make people stop and want to read and look at what you're really sharing with them.
Amazing.
Obviously, when it comes to writing, me and Jon know as well as anyone how scary a blank piece of paper is. So the best advice we can really give you is to try not to overthink it and to just start writing. Good writing is good writing, so don't overcomplicate it. You're writing for people at the end of the day, so keep your content focused, informative, and to the point. Don't try and get too wordy. Don't use jargon. Use something that works for everyone. Using stuff like focusing on only using the active voice. The passive voice can be too vague and hard to follow. The active voice is a lot direct and clearer. It also shows who you're doing what for. It also helps with readability. You've got to remember a lot of people when they're reading online, they're skimming it. It's very rare that people are sitting there and they're really engaging in a piece of content and reading it end to end. Most of the time, you're Googling, you're looking for a specific answer, and you're going to click on the first thing that pops up that goes, yes, that's what I need right now. Maybe from then they will delve deeper into your content, but everyone is pretty much time poor at this point in life. So what you need is something that really just answers their question quickly, easily. Yeah, and just making sure it's comprehensive for everyone, not using jargon. Like we're at a point now where people are able to access content from all over the world. Like we've seen today, we've got so many people in from all over the world. Having people are working in different languages, having content that's easy to read, easy to understand, can be easily auto-translated by AI. All of those things do make an impact on who you're reaching. So just the simpler, the better. Don't overcomplicate it.
And to your point, Rose, as well, there are so many places that you can actually go and get content from. It's an interesting fact, actually, that I discovered a few years ago. In the last decade, there's been more content published in that decade than there is in the entirety of human history. So let that sink in. That's absolutely insane. So everybody is writing content. So I think to Rose's point, the simple, the easier to understand, the better, really, because that's what helps separate you from a jargon-filled nonsense.
Yeah, with such an oversaturation, it's so hard to stand out. And I think people want to sound too authoritative by making things overcomplicated, and that's not what people need. They need quick answers and they need them now. They don't need to be trying to work out what specific words mean and having to keep multiple tabs open just to understand a paragraph in a piece of blog content.
Yeah. I think Kasia, like one of our colleagues who's snuck into the chat, and we haven't actually orchestrated this at all, but she did volunteer that like you speak is one of the best pieces of advice she's ever been given. Completely agree with that. Try not to be someone else, be you when it comes to talk like you would normally talk, don't overthink how you would talk, if that makes sense. I think it does.
Just a quick one as well, and thanks for that, Cassia. I appreciate you sending that through. I think as well, Sarah sent a question a little bit before about perhaps engaging with a marketing pot for a specific topic. But I think, Sarah, if it's okay, we'll probably save that question for a little bit towards the end, because I think it's a bit more involved, and we'll probably come back to that if that's okay. So yeah, just wanted to flag that while we're on. Over to you guys again.
Brian had a really interesting comment. He said, I think writing how you speak is sometimes a mistake. I found using shorter sentences is better. A speaking voice on paper can be filled with run-ons. Yes and no. I think when you talk, you naturally when I'm reading something out or when I'm reading a book to my daughter, I don't read it like an uninterrupted stream of consciousness. Like the intonation and the breaks in my sentence naturally flow in. But I can see your point. I can see that if you're not 100% certain about what you're saying and why you're saying it, that might be a tendency to wobble on, a bit like what I'm doing now, really.
Nice and precise.
Yeah.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I had was when I was a journalist, and someone said, when you're telling a story or when you're writing a story, you should write it as if you're telling that story in the pub. So you want to focus on the most crucial pieces of information first. So no one wants to go, there was a fire down the street. You want to know where it was, when it happened. You want to know the key bits right at the top. You don't want to let things funnel and have all the necessary details spread out apart. Just focus on what you're saying, why you're saying it, and why it's important. And from there, you'll just be concise and clear and easy to understand.
No, I agree with that. I'm sorry. What I was really wanting to draw attention to, it took us 23 minutes to mention the pub. You can tell we're from Britain, can't you? But no, I really identify with that comment there. Like right in the pub, it just brings the barriers down, I think, for sure. Great comment. And also, by the way, one other thing before I turn over to Dan, I love this engagement in the comments, so please keep it coming. It's really nice to see everyone getting involved.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Keep your comments coming in because I really like that. I think there was a good one up there from Dan Bristow as well, saying that the quantity over the last 10 years has been significant, but the quality, the implication being it's kind of tailed off a bit. But I think that's what the guys are really saying as well. And it's something that I always see with content is if you decide something's valuable, you are going to engage with it. That value for the audience is always at the core of what you're going to do. So yes, there might be a lot of noise out there. Hopefully the ways and the channels by which we deliver this are always going to get picked up on, and they will prioritize what is valuable. So I would say that's at the core of any good piece of content anyway. But yeah, I'll stop talking now and hand back over to you guys. Don't want to derail it too much.
You're fine. I'm going to move on now, but I will answer some of the questions that have been mentioned there a little bit later on. In the last slide, we talked about frameworks and models, and I said to ignore them. I've just rebranded one and taken all the credit for it and called it my blog post sandwich. And I've been using my Jon's blog post sandwich for about 15 years, actually, and it works in my head. So every blog post I've ever written, I've split it up in this way, and I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. So like in any blog post, there's 3 parts. There's the introduction, right? Which is where you can basically tell them like, okay, what's the problem that you're talking about? And this is really important here as well, that you just basically set expectations at the outset, what they're going to get like from reading your blog post. So the worst thing you can do when you start writing a blog post is not do that, because if they don't know what they're going to get, like when they actually read like the 1,000 words, 1,500 words, 2,000 words, depending on how much detail needs to be discussed in the blog post, they're just going to swipe away. I do it all the time. If I see a blog post and I look at it and I'm going, crikey, this is really long and I don't know what I'm going to get out of it, then I'm just going to ignore it because I'm pretty ruthless like that. The next bit is the fill in, and this is like the middle bit, like the quite important bit, actually, really, to be honest with you. Once you set expectations, once you've done that first bit, it's about discussing like whatever problem that you're going to talk about in your blog post in a lot of detail. So you're going back to what Rose mentioned a few minutes ago when she was a journalist. You need to start with the most important and most detailed points there. So mention that first, because like Rose was saying, like people skim read, right? They might not necessarily get all the way to the bottom of your blog post and have assimilated absolutely everything in there. So get the most important point in there because of that. But then you might actually grab their attention anyway if they resonate. They might go, oh, do you know what? Like this blog post really speaks to me. If I was writing, for instance, about some of the recipes that I talked about for me personally as a busy dad, a working dad, and like some of the really nice, I personally like Italian food, and some of them are in there at the start, I'd be like, yeah, I'll be all over this, actually implementing and executing on those recipes. Once you've got that opening bit, to start cascading that down into the supporting points. So the less important stuff follows next. Just repeating again what Rose said, this needs to be clear and concise. So no jargon, no fluff. Make it very easy to read and easy to digest. I would normally recommend 4 to 6 sections, I guess, for a conventional standard blog post for about, I would say, 1,000 to 1,200 words. But there are exceptions to the norm. We at Capsule here, we've written some absolute mammoth guides. This year, I wrote, this isn't a flex, by the way, it's just a fact. I wrote a 4,000 word blog post about tools that small business owners need, right? Not just tools, everything small business owners need to get started in the UK. And I covered everything from getting registered with Companies House and getting finance set up, and then the tools that they might use, and then how to get an accountant and so on and so forth. It really depends on the topic. It really depends on that research piece beforehand, how much detail you put into it. You'll get a sense when you've done that research how important that topic is and how much detail you need to go to. Finally, the bottom, the bread at the bottom of your blog post. This is the most important bit. So pay attention. You need a CTA in here. Now, if you don't know what that means, that's a call to action, right? So once they've read your blog post, you need to tell them what you want them to do, right? So if that's like in the example of Capsule talking about us, we want people to go and consider going on to start a trial with us, right? Or another blog post, like we might want them to actually read another blog post in that series. Like you need to just identify from your research, from your website, from all the stuff that you do, what you would like them to do. Okay? Editing. Am I doing this? I am, aren't I? Yes. I forgot for a second. I will email that 4,000 word blog post to you. You're speaking to my ego. Of course I will.
It's a good piece. I'll give him that.
So Ernest Hemingway is one of my favorite writers. And brevity is his biggest thing, which you can see I suffer from lack of brevity. You'll come to know me during this webinar. But he famously said the first draft of anything is a swear word. So the best thing for you to do is like get that scalpel to your blog posts, right? And go through this little checklist that I've pulled together here. You can build these really long checklists and things you need to look out for, but I'd say these are the most important things, right? Make sure that the content you've written makes sense, right? So what do I mean by make sense? Like it's what it says on the tip. Does it logically follow a structure? Can you read it and can you understand it? In an era where there's lots of misinformation out there on the internet, as someone that's now writing content, it is incumbent on you to make sure that what you've written is factual, because that's really important, right, guys? You really want to make sure that what you've written is truthful to the best of your knowledge, because people, when they start reading your content and consuming your content, it's really important that they can trust it. So that's that. And then this links back to what Hemingway said. Have you used too many words in your blog post? Can you pare things back? And if you can, great, get rid of it. Are things in active voice? Rose is going to talk about that a little bit later, so I'll save that. Are there any super long sentences, similar to the lots and lots of words things, but sometimes going back to the point that was raised earlier in the chat, you can write like an uninterrupted stream of consciousness and you get a really long sentence that doesn't actually have an ending to it ever. So put those full stops and put those commas in there so you can give your reader the chance to breathe and me a chance to breathe as well, please. And then lastly, does the language in the blog post match what your interviewees would say? So this is super important. Going back to step one, and when you've interviewed them and when you've had a chat with them, the most effective blog posts and the most effective marketing in general or content in general is literally stuff that's lifted from what people are saying. And I'll give you a great example. Earlier on this year at Capsule, we actually spoke to 25 of our customers and we started like understanding more about the challenges that they have day to day and the problems that they have day to day, which I'm sure many of you might share. And many of them said that they felt their day was on fire and they felt burnt out and they felt like it's a constant battle with a spreadsheet and other things pre-CRM. So we started replicating that language in our marketing collateral and we started replicating that language in our paid advertising. And we ended up actually performing really well. Like we got like way more clicks on the adverts that had the new messaging in it. And it was a simple change. We just started talking the way that our customers talked instead of the way that we think our customers talk, if that makes sense. So super duper important. One thing I missed that I've just remembered, and just going back to the Jon blog post sandwich slide, I said not to write your headline. And there's a good reason for that. I don't like writing my headlines until the very end. And that's because I don't know what the piece is going to be yet. Like I draft a layout broadly of what I think the piece is going to be before I write it. But then once I've written the piece and I've got all the stuff in there that I know is going to be nice and I'm happy with it, then I write the headline at the end because it encapsulates and summarizes it as best I can.
Headlines, as Jon said, these are often the most trickiest part of writing in general. They are the main thing that catches and brings your audience in. There's an old SEO joke that the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 of Google, because if it doesn't stand out, it will never be found. And Google, headlines are quite important to Google. If they've got, it's not just about packing them with keywords, it's just making sure that headline perfectly explains exactly what your piece is. It needs to capture the whole piece, it needs to be punchy, and it needs to also spark curiosity. We don't want to get clickbaity, but being a little bit controversial, being bold, doing something that really stands out will make people click because they'll be interested, they'll want to know more. And sometimes you do have to trick people a little bit, not trick them, but get them interested so that they actually click in and are engaged with what you're writing. Most importantly, again, you just need to be clear and concise. People are, when they're searching for a question, especially now with the way Google is laid out, there's so many AI summaries at the top of every page. If you want to stand out against these summaries, because obviously we know there's a lot of problems with them, they're not always accurate, they're not always pulling from the right sources. So people are usually scrolling past them, and you want your headline to be the one that stands out against everyone else's. And it's not just on Google, on social media as well. When you look at how things are on LinkedIn, usually you'll have a big long bit of text and you'll only have the first line that's visible before people have to click in and see more. And if you're not capturing people's attention with that first line, people aren't going to click in and want to read the really well-written content that you've spent all this time working on. They're just going to scroll past it, and it's just a waste of your efforts and your time. So getting your headline right is essential. So yeah, just make it relevant, be clear and concise, don't make it too wordy, and if you can, be a little bit dangerous and a bit bold.
What would you advocate for being dangerous, Rose? What's the sort of things you would think?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not very good at them. Usually you rewrite them for me.
I love it.
Jon is
Love
much
it.
better at headlines than me. I'm not very good. That might be why I'm not a journalist anymore.
All right. I haven't Sorry, go on, Dan.
Just a very quick one before you get into the demo. I think there was a couple of things here that I just wanted to call out from the chat. Marietta asks, is there an ideal number of words for a blog before people switch off? And I think it varies from person to person, right?
Yeah, I think people always ask, like, how long should a blog post be? And it's a little bit like, how long is a piece of string? It needs to be as long as it needs to be. Like we said, you need to be, don't waffle on, but make sure it's long enough that it covers everything that it needs to cover. It really is just practice. Like I said, a lot of the time now when people Google stuff, when you have the subheadings, when they'll click on something, it will take them to that they'll take them to a specific section within your blog that answers their specific question. I don't think there's a lot of arguments around, do longer blogs perform better with Google? And people have used the skyscraper method for a while of just making their blogs longer and longer to try and stand out. Google doesn't love that really anymore. Now it's more just about how good the content is rather than the like quantity. So, like Jon said, around 1,000 to 1,200 words is a good length to start off with. You can always go and add to it or edit it in the future if it's not performing that well. But yeah, just focus on the quality of the content rather than the quantity.
Yeah, quality and purpose, big watchwords there. And then just a very quick one from Robert as well. If you're writing in Word, to get the system to read it back to you. So hearing the text will allow you to see if it's natural and scanned easy to read. It's quite a nice tip about that. Sorry, Stephanie's just come in. I know you're desperate to do this demo, Jon. Stephanie's just asked, what do you feel about the use of infographics as part of a blog? What do you think of it?
I'll take this one. I think it's great. I think that the more rich you can make your blog posts, the better, for several reasons. I'm going to move to humans first and then go on to the search engines afterwards. For humans, if you give humans more way to assimilate information, right, whether it's written word, whether it's a infographic, whether it's a visual, that's a big win because we all learn and all assimilate information in different ways. However, our machine overlords in Google quite like that as well. They think that adds to the overall usability experience and it ranks better. So it's twofold. But my biggest advice to you is always think of the humans.
Brilliant. Love that. Right. I'm not going to keep you from your demo any longer. Fire away.
You're quite all right. I'm going to have to minimize this a little bit so you can see all my windows here. But what I wanted to show you all is just a little thing I made in ChatGPT actually before this session started. And I'm not against using ChatGPT actually. I think it's a really powerful and great tool. When I was a little bit younger, when I first started, white pages of content with no text in it did fill me a little bit with existential dread. What on earth am I going to write in there? And what ChatGPT is really great for is it eliminates that blank page syndrome. You're able to get started quite quickly. What have I done here? So that persona I shared a little bit earlier about myself based on the questions that we'll send out to you later on that Rose covered. I put that in a doc really quickly for the purpose of this conversation. And then what I did is I've got a paid ChatGPT license, guys. And then I went to create my own GPT. I went and filled out all of these fields in the configure section. So I gave it a name, I gave it some very basic instructions, and then we uploaded that document that I just showed you into the knowledge section. And then I checked this box here, which says code interpreter and data analysis. So that's super important because it will not read that file unless you tick that box, right? You have to do that. So what did I do? I created it. I then started asking it questions. So I'm going to ask some questions now, of myself, which is a bit meta and weird, but I'm going to ask, would you be able to recommend some blog post titles for this persona? Ian, you've got to tick the data analysis and code section in the create ChatGPT section. So I've asked it a question. you can see that it's read that file there, and then it's given us some example headlines for us to get started here. So you can see we've got, and I might zoom in a little bit actually, because it's probably tiny on your screens. But you can see here on the example I've shared, I've got some nice, interesting ideas here. So I know myself better than anybody else, which is a stupid thing to say, but I've just said it. I quite the boring chicken headline. So I am going to pop that there in this bit here. And then I'm going to say, create me an outline for a blog post. What this is going to do is it's going to create like a little bit of an outline of what this blog post would look like. It's given the sections there. It's given like a hook at the start, which I mentioned. And if it's good, it's given you a call to actions because I've specified that as well there. What you can do with all of this, you can go section by section. Let's go right the intro section. Looks like the layout, actually, I'm happy with it. Let's have a look. And then what it's done, it's generated some, I'd probably say it's okay copy just by glancing at it here. So what I would do now is I would take that copy into a Google Doc and I would then start editing it. So I would change some words around. I would then maybe put a little bit of my personality in there to just actually change the copy from being AI. This is only a quick demo. The other thing I wanted to show you is one last thing actually, is just it can do more than just write a blog post. If you remember from my example, I hang out a lot on Reddit. So I am now going to ask it, can I get a Reddit post for, sorry, to promote this blog post? I'm going to say please because I'm polite.
I always say please to my GPT.
You have to.
Okay, so that overload one day.
You have to. So I'm not a big fan of the way that's written, if I'm being perfectly honest. The reason for that is, but I do find that like it's all sounds the same. I got you appears a lot in ChatGPT, like kind of style content. So what I'm going to do is I would like this post to have more humor and energy in it. And I would like to call in a little more detail about alternative recipes. I can't spell recipes because I'm typing so quickly. And you see, it's trying to do a little bit of good humor there. If I eat one more sad, lifeless chicken breast, I might cry. I can definitely relate to that. But this is what I'm trying to show you. You can be a lot more experimental and playful with it. My best advice for using ChatGPT, two things, right? Treat it like having a conversation with a person, go back and forth, build like those just conversations in. The second is don't take like what it outputs as gospel and copy and paste it. What you need to do is edit it, make sure that you are like taking that output and making sure it's coming from you. All right. I'm going to have to stop because we need to go back to the presentation. Over to Rose.
Yeah, so distribution. A lot of the time, we think that the best option is to just put our content out on every single channel and hope for the best. But again, it's all about personalization. You need to think about where are your audience spending their time. So if you're in B2B, chances are most of your audience are going to be on LinkedIn because they're looking to network and build relationships that way. If you're in a very like visual like e-commerce brand, you'll probably be your customers will probably be on things like Instagram, Pinterest. It also depends on age, demographics, that sort of thing. So you need to look at that because there's no point if you're sharing all of your content and you're working on all this content and it's not reaching the right people at the right times. That's your first step. The second step is to repurpose a lot of your content. So like we're doing now, you could be doing webinars or blog posts, and you could be turning those into social media clips or social media carousels and stuff like that. We know how time poor small businesses are. So don't overwork yourself. You can rework the same stuff and try it out on different platforms. In the early stages, it's all about experimenting. It can be quite disheartening when you first start with content because you feel sometimes that you're posting things into a black void if you're not getting the interactions that you want. So look at doing some A/B testing, try posting at different times, try different messaging styles. If you've tried the bold headline approach and it's not working, maybe that's not your audience's style. So consider toning it back, doing something else, and just try not to put all your eggs in one basket. You might think that long form content is the best thing that you can do, but then you find out that no one's actually taking the time to read those posts. And it would have been better if you summarized that blog into 5 points and put it on Instagram carousel. And people are actually sharing that because they have the time to look at it, read it, and they don't have to click on it and they can view it on their phone, stuff like that. There's a lot of things that you need to consider. So I think, yeah, your first step is really to just experiment and see what works. Different content works for different brands. We see that all the time. What has worked in previous roles for me doesn't work for Capsule now. So just don't get too disheartened at first. You will find your audience. You just need to have a bit of a look for them first. So when building and posting a schedule, like I said, it can feel disheartening, but the most important thing is to be consistent. Not everything is going to go viral, but so don't give up. Regular posts will build your audience slowly over time. They keep your brand at the top of people's minds, and when you suddenly start posting sporadically, your audience can be a bit surprised by that. It also does boost your visibility on SEO because I think people forget that once you post content, it is there forever until you take it down. Just because you posted a blog 2 years ago and it didn't do very well initially, trends can change, and you could find that customers 2 years in the future are suddenly finding this post and finding it really useful and relevant and helpful to them. Instagram is about to roll out a feature where all of its public posts will now be indexed by Google. So there's Instagram posts that could have been made 5 years ago by a company that could be relevant to an audience who are searching in a couple weeks, and that can massively boost their traffic. Evergreen content is there forever and it will always be relevant. So when you are building a content plan, maybe factor that in of always creating stuff that will be eternally relevant. Obviously, it's great to jump on trends, but there are some topics that are always important and always interesting to talk about. There's also tools you can use to help this. In Capsule, we have our project tracker, and you can use that to really help you stay on track and stay committed. So you can plan your posting schedule in advance, create deadlines and publish dates. You can assign tasks to teams if you're working in a smaller team. And you can also do stuff like align your content through the pipeline. So if you know you have customers that are in close to closing, but they might need a little bit of help, you could send them relevant content like case studies that's lower in the funnel that can really help them make those better decisions. So be sure to use the tools you have. You don't have to do it all alone and just keep it all in your head. Be sure to lay it out because that will help you stay consistent as well.
Speaking of tools, I hope there's some video game fans here because this is probably going to fall flat, but it's my super secret cheat menu that I wanted to share with you all on the tools that our team and I use day to day. I've already shown you ChatGPT, so that's brilliant. I'm a big fan of that, but I'm also a big fan of Grammarly as well. And that's really good for capturing and spotting those occasional typos that you might have, but then also like any grammatical, punctuation, structural things that don't sound right or look right as well. At the top of the call, I mentioned I'm a fan of Hemingway. Hemingway has an app that's really good for brevity. So do check that out if you are like me and brevity is an issue. Google Docs, I use that every day. It feels silly mentioning it, but it's free. It's easy to use. So definitely get on that. Our team use something called Surfer SEO as well, and that's really good for making sure that your blog post is readable by the machines at Google as well. So it scans the Google algorithm and make sure that you can assign the appropriate terms, which are basically the things that you should be saying in the piece to make sure it's discoverable by Google. But A word of caution on that, I would say, goes back to what I was saying earlier. Always prioritize for the humans. I sometimes override what a surfer's telling me because I think that that would actually detract from making the piece like readable for a human being. We use Descript as well on our team, and Descript is one of the coolest tools I've ever used in my life. And if you can write in a Google Doc, you can edit a video using Descript. So that's really cool. You just get your video, it creates like a doc, and you just actually go and delete whole reams of text that line up to the video, and then that cuts it automatically. So it's super valuable and super useful. Rose has mentioned Capsule from the project management perspective, so I'm not going to do that. Little bit of a shout out though. We are not a one product company. We also have a email marketing, social media scheduling, and chatbot tool called Transpond. And Transpond is great. Going back to Rose's point a few minutes ago, if you want to like actually distribute and get your content out there, you can use Transpond to create and write emails and attach your content to it. If you get a little bit braver later on, once you've got the blog post regimen down, you can even have gated content assets with Transpond as well. So do check them out, guys, and let me know what you think.
So there was a couple of questions that were a bit further up in the chat feed. So if anybody else has got questions, fire them through. Don't know how fixed you are, Rose and John, for maybe running a couple of minutes past. But if not, we can cut it short. That's not a problem. But Rindam asked before if we have any tips for SEO title, SEO description, etc. I guess this is more about writing for a specific purpose that kind of leaned on what you were saying before, Rose. But I didn't know if there was any kind of best practice, what you guys employ for that.
Again, just making it as relevant to the content that you're writing. Headings, I hate to suggest using keywords because I think people overuse them, but doing a bit of keyword research on tools like SEMrush can give you a great idea of what words people are using specifically when they search for stuff. But yeah, with your titles, just making them as clear and as relevant as possible is the most crucial bit of advice. Keywords are secondary, and the same with your descriptions. I think summarize exactly what the piece is, but also creating something that is quite engaging, that does catch the eye and does make people want to click is important. Google is clever. It knows when you're just keyword stuffing a piece. So yeah, again, don't try and trick it and just be as relevant and accurate as you can, and also just engaging.
Thank you for that, Rose. Louise, that's correct. SEMrush, SEMrush, that is a very good solution that we use here as well. Basically he reiterated the point that people are more and more time poor now. How do you really get people to engage with what you're putting out there? Any tips on that? I think we touched on it a little bit about being concise, but is there anything else that occurs to you both? And just to qualify that as well, we may look at other types of content further down the line, like things like video, etc., in a different session. This is mainly been written word, but I don't know if you both have any tips on that.
I'm going to answer this question, and I'm going to answer it like combining another question from Matthew about how can you research topics that could be controversial, relevant, or viral at the time you publish your content. Now, the reason I'm going to answer them together is like, how can you make your content more engaging? You could be a little bit more controversial. You could be a little bit more relevant and viral. So how do you do that? It's a fine line to balance. You don't want to do something that's not great and it's going to result in a bit of a problem for you. But it goes back to the research piece. That's where I would start. I would first of all, start thinking about what are the things that those people find frustrating, or those people, and really get under the skin of that. And then combine that with some social media work as well and some news work as well. And then find a way to inject your brand and inject your business into a viral trend. So in the UK, right, there's a company called Surreal. and they're a cereal company, and they are brilliant at this. They're so good. They have a team that produce like amazing content on their LinkedIn that's not even, there's this like facsimile that LinkedIn content needs to be professional, but in like the space of 2 years, they've amassed nearly of 250,000 followers just by like, they understand their ICP, they understand that like they've blended humor into their marketing and communications, and they know that like people like humor and they like irreverence, and that's what gets them the followership, that's what gets them the engagement, and that's what gets them, I think, in my view, performing really well. So I think it's a muscle, being controversial and being a little bit engaging. You've got to like, you think of lifting weights, you've got to lift little weights initially and test the water. Eventually you'll keep like lifting more and more until you're synonymous for it.
Ian has asked, how do you spell surreal? I know that's pretty much your favourite LinkedIn page, isn't it, John? So yeah, you spell surreal. Just
Ian, you spelt it right. You've spelt it right. That's
Good.
the folks over there.
Do we have time for any more questions there, folks? Or do we need to bring it to a close here? I know we've run a little bit over time.
I've got time for a couple more.
Okay, but let's have a quick look. There's some great feedback here as well. People saying that there's some great nuggets there, and they found it to be a very useful session. So thank you very much. How important is SEO in titles, and is it going to continue to be important with the AI search functions being rolled out? You need a little bit of a crystal ball with that, but I don't know if you've got a view on that, guys.
I think obviously AI has really changed search functions, and also just the way that people search has been massively changed by AI. I can't really give too much of an opinion because, like you say, God knows, it could all change tomorrow. Previously, Google relied a lot more on keywords, but now with AI, it's able to scan content a lot quicker and understand what's going on in the content. So it's not as crucial, like I said, with the keyword stuffing. So again, avoid that and just focus much more on making sure it's relevant. Google hates when you have a heading for a piece of content and then that heading and the content don't match at all. So again, just making sure that everything's relevant, everything's concise. And if I say concise one more time, like I'm very sorry, guys.
Very concise in itself. Yeah, that's
I'm doing the
point.
complete opposite of what that word means, but
it's a great point though, because on social as well, where people hijack a theme and then they use it to get popularity off the back of it. People aren't fools. You have to have that quality and value at the core of what you're doing, and it has to follow through. Yeah. And that carries on after the person stopped reading the piece and how it relates to you and your business as well. So
yeah, audiences are more informed than ever. It used to be a lot easier to do some of these more like marketing tricks on people, but it doesn't work now. Everyone works for a business pretty much. They know how these systems work. So being honest and transparent always works so much better.
One last one for Matthew. I think you may have covered some of this, but how can you research topics that could be controversial, relevant, or viral at the time that you publish your content? Question.
I think we covered that off. Yeah, I think we covered that one off. This is a real example. Ian, I thought Ian's question was really good. Everyone's question's been really good, but I'd like to answer that one. It's about what's working for Capsule at the moment, top 3 and 5. I'll tell you what's working for Capsule. AI. And Rose, take a bow. In her first month at Capsule, Rose wrote a piece on our website called Top AI Tools, and it is hard carrying the rest of our blog. It's had millions of views over the last 2 years. Definitely AI. I would say as well, use case content. So what works really well there, what I mean by that is like content that explains a problem and how there's a solution to the problem. So we have like lots of tools within Capsule and Transpond that can be solved like depending on the persona, depending on like the problem that people are having. So why that works well is we get a relatively low number of people viewing them, but we get a really high level of signups. posts on the back of them, so people read it and they go, this has been really useful for my day-to-day. I now know how to, for instance, project manage an event using Capsule, or I know how to run an email marketing campaign with Transpond, and then they go on to sign up. So I've described two different types of blog posts there. One that like captures a large volume of content that Rose wrote, and then another piece of content that's like more geared towards helping people understand the value of our solution in a way that's not pushy.
Thank you very much, John. Look, I'm going to be a hard head and bring things to a close here because we've run 6 minutes over time, and I think our webinar company is running out of server space to host the recording. So we need to get into a bit of post-editing after the session, which is fantastic. But two things to mention. Firstly, thank you to you all for attending, and we really love the feedback in the chat. Really love that. I love the positive comments. If you have any ideas about future sessions that you'd like to see from us, I've added our LinkedIn profiles before. Give us an ad on LinkedIn, drop us a message I'd like to know. And I'd like to give a special shout out as well to Rose for joining us for this session. So thank you very much. First of many, I'm sure. And thanks for
It was Rose's
joining
first
as well.
time, guys. Her
Absolutely.
first time doing a webinar.
So there we go.
Tell everyone.
You wouldn't be able to tell what a natural for this setting. Absolutely. So thank you very
she's
much.
crushed it.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you, everyone. Wherever you are, enjoy your morning, evening, or afternoon, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. See you, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.